Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It's Sunday, but we have a weekly recap of all the top stories of August 18th, 2025, all conveniently located in one spot. That's right here. You're welcome. Hope you enjoy it. And remember, it's the recap. Don't say, didn't I see this already? It's a recap. It's like a best of. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
Bryan Kohberger wants his mommy. Okay, I've had lots of clients go to prison. Okay, it's just the nature of the business over the last 30 years. It's gonna happen a couple of times. I know. I'm disappointed too when it happens. Well, sometimes some people deserve it, but let's be realistic. When the inmate calls and says, oh, they're not treating me very nicely down here, number one thing you don't want to do, complain. And two, that's kind of like having your mommy call the jail and say that you're being mistreated. Because you know what they're going to do at the jail? They're going to laugh at you and they're going to let everybody know that that's what's going on. And basically, that's what Bryan Kohberger has done. I want my mommy to take care of it. So in a twist of irony that even the most seasoned individual might envy, Bryan Kohberger, infamous for his heinous crimes, now finds himself on the receiving ends of some unwelcome advances behind bars. That's right, the convicted killer has lodged a formal grievance alleging sexual harassment from fellow inmates, complete with vivid threats that paint a rather unflattering picture of a little prison camaraderie. Now, Kohberger, currently residing in the Idaho Maximum Security Institution's J Block in Boise, penned a heartfelt request on July 30th for an immediate change of scenery after enduring just one night in his new digs. Citing relentless verbal barbs and a general atmosphere of unrest and any participation in occasional self-flooding antics, he expressed a strong desire to bid adieu to Unit Number 2. Prison records have been reviewed, and they reveal his plea fell on somewhat deaf ears. The prison officials advised patience, noting that such disruptions are infrequent and the block typically maintains a serene demeanor. Undeterred by the initial rebuff, Kohberger escalated matters 5 days later on August 4th, submitting a detailed note to a guard. In it, he recounted alleged taunts of a particular explicit nature, including one inmate's promise of forcible intimacy and another's quip about dining preferences centered on Kohberger himself. A subsequent report from the witnessing guard acknowledged overwhelming profane exchanges aimed at the newcomer, but could not pinpoint the culprits amid all the people making remarks. So despite these claims, that's right, no transfer has materialized for Bryan Kohberger. In fact, Kohberger had specifically eyed B Block as a preferable alternative, where solitary cells and restricted interactions mirror his current setup. Yet, prison notes indicate he ultimately felt secure enough to stay put in J Block, a unit blending general population with protective custody and even a few death row residents. Although it offers limited perks like daily outdoor time and bi-daily showers, a step down from his pre-conviction luxury accommodations. Now, this episode unfolds against the backdrop of Kohberger's grim legacy. Obviously, he is serving 4 life sentences following his confession to the savage stabbing deaths of the University of Idaho students, Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin back in November of 2022. And as the wheels of justice turn slowly, it seems the confines of incarceration are proving a bit of a challenge arena for adaptation, proving that even predators can feel preyed upon in the ecosystem of the maximum security prison. Now, the Idaho Department of Corrections has yet to provide commentary on the matter. For those tracking tales of crime and consequences, such developments underscore the unpredictable undercurrents of prison life. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you might as well have your mommy call if you are making notes saying people are being mean to you. Because if you're going to check yourself in to solitary, they're going to refer to you, I hate to say it, you're going to be a little bitch. It's not going to be pleasant for Bryan Kohberger. He has got a long way to go at being only 30 years of age, even given the average life expectancy in prison is up to about 62 years, I think. Not a huge time. Hey, another 30 years or so. You almost would have thought that maybe he'd want to go to trial, take his chances at death penalty, and be in the limelight. Now it's just kind of a watch to see what bad things happen to Bryan Kohberger. Who's going to get to him first? Is there going to be a little bit of forcible intimacy, as they say, in prison? Perhaps. Let's wait and see. Next on the docket, Lori Vallow. That's right, her Idaho encore. Back on the road again to familiar haunts. That's right. The prodigal prisoner returns. That's right. Lori Vallow, fresh from her Arizona escapades where she collected not 1, 2 life sentences for conspiring to orchestrate the untimely exits of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, and her ex-nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux, has been whisked back to the great state of Idaho. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office confirmed early Monday morning that she was sent back on August 18th, complete with an escort that screamed VIP treatment. If VIP stands for very incarcerated person, perhaps. Anyway, she was extradited to Arizona back in November of 2023 to face those pesky conspiracy charges. Vallow did not disappoint. An April jury pinned her for plotting Vallow's demise, and by June, another panel added Boudreaux to her grim resume. Last month, she was handed those matching life terms, ensuring her calendar stays booked indefinitely. Of course, this isn't Vallow's first rodeo in the Gem State. She's already serving a life sentence there for her role in the tragic deaths of her children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, plus her 5th husband's ex-wife, Cammie Daybell. Now she's on the road again, cruising back to those oh-so-familiar prison confines where she'll while away her remaining days in a setting that equal parts nostalgic and eternal. Talk about a homecoming with no escape clause. Next, the bond bid for the ex-sheriff. So as the calendar edges toward the 1-year mark since a Kentucky district judge met a tragic end in his own courthouse chambers, the debate over pretrial freedom for the accused former sheriff lingers like an unresolved verdict. Now, Sean Mickey Steins, one of the lawmen there of Letcher County, finds himself ensnared in a capital murder charge, with his defense team now angling for a modest $50,000 bond, cash or property, to secure his release from awaiting trial. One might quip that facing the possibility of a permanent change of address to state accommodations, Steins could be wiser to hoard every penny for the attorney's fees that promise to amount higher than the Appalachian Hills. Now, in a courtroom exchange on August 15th, the defense attorney, Carrie Bartley, painted Steins as the epitome of reliability, deeply rooted in his community, buoyed by family ties, including a wife and daughter, and posing negligible risk of flight or harm, the lowest possible level for risk, she asserted, emphasizing that no evidence suggests otherwise. Yet the special prosecutor, Jackie Steele, countered with constitutional precision, invoking Kentucky's charter, which bars bail for capital offenses where proof is evident and presumption is strong, rendering community goodwill irrelevant to the gravity of the accusations itself. Now, Steins has remained incarcerated in an eastern Kentucky facility since surrendering without resistance following the September 19th, 2024 shooting of Judge Mullins there in Whitesburg, Kentucky. Now, pleading not guilty to the murder of a public official, a charge that could invite the death penalty, though prosecutors have yet to declare their intent, Steins resigned his sheriff post mere days after the incident, and the motive remains shrouded in mystery, despite revelations that the two men, longtime acquaintances, had lunched together hours before, with Mullins suggesting a private meeting with whose purpose eludes clarity. Now, the presiding judge, as a special appointee, deferred a decision on the bond during the hearing, granting both sides until September 2 to submit additional arguments on this and other pretrial issues, including motions to unseal Steins' psychological evaluation and the motion to dismiss the indictment. The judge pledged to accelerate his rulings, potentially paving the way for a trial, but it will be scheduled soon after. Now, a prior hearing unveiled some chilling and silent footage of the event, a figure identified as Steins drawing a firearm, firing at the seated judge, then advancing to discharge more rounds as Mullen sought cover behind the desk. And in a community that's interwoven as Whitesburg, nestled some 100 miles southeast of Lexington near the Virginia border, the shockwaves in this small community continue to reverberate. Now, while the attorney's plea underscores Stein's ties to hearth and home, the prosecutor's stance serves as a stark reminder. In matters of life and death, constitutional safeguards trump sentiment. For Steins, that $50,000 might indeed prove a fleeting temptation. Better perhaps to earmark it for the defense arsenal, lest the scale of justice tip toward an extended involuntary sabbatical. Mr. Steins, okay, let me give it a pro point. Just did this trial. Don't walk towards somebody who's unarmed. Shoot him in the back. I know you didn't shoot the judge in the back, but you might as well have. It looks bad on video. You're not going anywhere. And save the $50,000 for your defense attorneys, or save it for your commissary fund when you get to prison. Don't be wasting time and money on things that are not going to happen. You're not going to go anywhere. When there's proof evident presumption, great. You're not entitled to a bond on a capital offense. That's just the way it is. I know everybody wants to get out on bond, but once everybody gets out on bond, they're unrealistic about going back on bond, going back into custody. It's very frustrating. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and do the time. Next on the docket, Donna Adelson's trial is beginning. That's right. Donna Adelson, alleged to be a key figure in the 2014 orchestrated killing of then Florida State University law professor Dan Markle, her former son-in-law. Following 2 days dedicated to individual juror interviews where the candidates were probed on their exposure to media coverage of this prominent case, the collective jury selection was scheduled to start this morning, and should a panel of 12 jurors and 3 alternates be finalized, proceedings could advance later today, as anticipated by the judge. Opening statements first thing tomorrow. And guess what? We're bringing it to you live. So come to Crime Talk with Scott Reich, where you can watch the trial gavel-to-gavel coverage. Now, for those who don't know, Miss Adelson is 75, and she's facing charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation related to Markle's death, an incident that has resulted in convictions for 4 others, including Miss Adelson's son, Charlie. Now, the contract killing occurred amid a contentious court battle over child custody between Markle and his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson. Well, the judge has directed the remaining pool of 110 potential jurors to obviously appear at the courthouse, where they were going to continue to whittle down potential jurors. What were the prosecutors asking about during the probing of jurors, also known as voir dire, a French term that means to speak the truth, to make sure the jurors can be fair and impartial to both sides? Well, attorneys were probing prospective jurors on their preconceptions of what a perpetrator might look like, specifically inquiring if such an individual could resemble a grandmother, a clear allusion to, obviously, Miss Adelson. What image comes to mind for a killer? The district attorney asked one of the candidates. The juror responded that there is no standard appearance. She followed up by asking if a killer could appear as a granny and urged jurors to maintain impartiality. Affirmative responses were noted by all of the potential jurors. There were inquiries into views as it relates to law enforcement and the justice system, and the judge, along with the counsel from both the prosecution and the defense, examined potential jurors on various subjects to ensure their fairness. Now, the judge initiated questionings about occupation, marital status, family, residency, duration in Leon County, and any connections to law enforcement, or if anyone has any personal criminal history themselves. Like I said, the goal is to assemble a jury pool of fair and impartial jurors for both sides. The attorneys recited their witness list, prompting jurors to disclose any acquaintances they may know. One individual mentioned a friendship with a lead FBI agent by the name of Pat Stafford, but affirmed it would not influence the potential jurors' judgment in any way. The prosecutors also asked if jurors would voice dissenting views during deliberations, and emphasized that the defense bears no obligation to present any evidence. Now, the entire responsibility rests with the prosecution. Judge Everett convened the state and defense attorneys in the jury room prior to commencing the group selection, and Donna Adelson attended as well. Anyway, the judge is expected to rule on defense motion to seek to exclude testimony from state witness Drina Bernhardt, a fellow inmate who reportedly engaged in discussions with Miss Adelson. Allegations involve Adelson offering payment for testimony, with the defense claiming that Miss Bernhardt acted as an improper informant for authorities. What do I always say, ladies and gentlemen? When you're in custody, zip it, zilch, keep your mouth shut. But nobody ever believes you. Everybody wants to talk about their case. Why are you here? Oh, let me help you with that. And then somebody gets some good information and says, hey, let me try to get a better result in my case by snitching on some little old lady that was trying to escape to Vietnam. There's already been 4 convictions. It's a fait accompli. No one will bother me, right? Well, that's right. You talk, people are going to use it against you. Anyway, there was also a pretty small a collection of jurors that actually showed from the initial 900 that were supposed to show up. Only 600 were called for the first 2 days, and only 223 or 37% actually appeared. That's a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone should want to do jury duty. Other than maybe voting, it's basically, you hear about constitutional rights all the time. You read about Supreme Court cases, but other than voting and being on jury service, that's really where the rubber meets the road for most people as it relates to basically constitutional law. Criminal law is constitutional law, ladies and gentlemen. The Bryan Kohberger case, the case that just never seems to end. Could you imagine, though, all the good talk we would have had he proceeded to trial? Yeah, it would have been 12 glorious weeks of content. But don't worry, he doesn't disappoint, because there has been new Bodycam video released. All right. So an overview for those who don't recall, Bryan Kohberger, the former criminology PhD student, was sentenced to life in prison without parole on July 23rd, following his guilty plea to 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary in the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. Now, this case all came about there in Moscow, Idaho, on November 13th of 2022. Anyway, significant attention due to the release of new evidence, including body cam footage and crime scene photos, after Kohberger obviously entered a plea. It's now becoming public knowledge, and guess he got off from the death penalty. So let's take a look at it, all right? So the initial response on November 13th shows that there was a report of an unconscious person at 1122 King Road, a shared student residence. Officers discovered the bodies of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, who had been stabbed multiple times. Now, recently released body cam footage captures the chaotic scene outside the home, where surviving roommates Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, along with friends, were visibly distraught as the reality of the quadruple homicide began to emerge. Now, the footage, spanning approximately 52 minutes, depicts a heartbreaking escalation into the witnesses' emotional states. Initially, survivors and friends are seen huddling under blankets in the road, exhibiting signs of shock and confusion upon the officers' arrival around midday. As police confirm the deaths inside the residence, the demeanor of those present shifted dramatically to one of profound grief and horror. Loud, guttural cries echoed from the group, with individuals collapsing into uncontrollable sobbing as the full extent of the tragedy became apparent. Now, Mortensen, who's barefoot and visibly trembling, broke down in tears while recounting her encounters with a masked intruder inside the residence earlier that morning, her voice breaking as she expressed disbelief, stating she had convinced herself nothing happens in Moscow. She appeared disoriented and overwhelmed, reportedly sobbing while describing hearing screams and seeing the figures, which she later linked to Kohberger. Now, Funk, sniffling and weeping, displayed similar distress, her hands shaking as she reviewed her phone for timestamps of calls and texts to the unresponsive roommates, whimpering that she had assumed they were merely asleep. Now, the arrival of additional students, including Chapin's triplet brother, Hunter Chapin, intensified the scene's emotional intensity, unaware of the deaths Hunter approached casually, only to be met with friends, anguished sobs, and direct notifications of his brother's fate, leading to visible devastation among the group. One friend, who had entered the home and discovered Kernodle's body, conveyed a frantic sense of unreality in subsequent interviews, describing the moment of realization as horrific as it was. Now, officers noted the witness's intoxication from the previous night may have contributed to DeLay's reactions, and Mortensen later explained she hesitated to call 911 due to disbelief and fear. Now, while Funk initially interpreted the events as a possible fraternity prank, throughout the footage, though, the collective demeanor reflected a transition from initial concern to raw, visceral anguish upon comprehending the scale of the murders, which, with redacted audio, captures sighs of emotion from officers themselves. The footage also shows the backsliding door left ajar, suggesting the intruder's escape. Crime scene images depict remnants of typical college evenings, such as a beer pong set up on the living room table, and Kernodle's partially eaten DoorDash order from Jack in the Box, delivered shortly before the attack. A footprint in the snow outside the house and a black bag found nearby in the woods were noted as potential evidence. Prosecutors detailed Kohberger's movements. He entered through the kitchen sliding door around 4 a.m., proceeding to the third floor to stab Mogen and Gonsalves in one bed, then attacked Kernodle Chapin on the second floor. Now, Mortensen heard a male voice saying, "I'm okay, I'm going to help you," and saw the intruder leave. Now, there's been no direct connection between Kohberger and the victims that has been basically established through proof, though his motives obviously still remain unclear. The Idaho State Police released over 500 pages of documents following Kohberger's sentencing, revealing suspicions of stalking. Cell phone data placed Kohberger near the King Road home at least 23 times between July and November of 2022, primarily at night. Victims and friends reported unusual incidents, including Gonsalves spotting a man in the nearby trees while walking her dog. Murphy, who uncharacteristically barked at the tree line during parties. On November 4th of 2022, roommates found their front door open and searched the house with a golf club, fearing an intruder. Gonsalves also mentioned being followed weeks earlier. Now, digital forensics on Kohberger's devices showed efforts to erase his online trail using VPNs, incognito mode, and cleared histories. A passive Google Map file linked of the Mad Greek restaurant where Mogen and Kernodle worked suggested possible prior research, though undated. Now, Kohberger, a vegan, may have visited the establishment, but this remains unconfirmed. And witness accounts from the Washington State University, where Kohberger studied, painted him as unsettling. Female classmates and faculty described him as condescending and sexist, with incidents of him blocking women in rooms or discussing serial killers like Ted Bundy. One professor warned he could become a future rapist if granted a PhD, citing 13 complaints about his behavior in a very short amount of time. A Pullman cafe worker reported daily visits from Kohberger, who learned her name and schedule without explanation, leading her to avoid him completely. She also experienced knocks on her windows and porch noises at home, coinciding with a white car matching Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra leaving the area. Now, obviously, Kohberger was ultimately arrested on December 30th of 2022 at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. After maintaining his innocence for over 2 years, he pled guilty in June of 2025, days before his capital trial was scheduled to begin, in exchange for avoiding a potential execution. The deal obviously divided victims' families. The Gonsalves and Kernodle families criticized it for denying them a full trial, while the Mogen and Chapin families supported it. At his July 23rd sentencing in Ada County, Kohberger heard impact statements labeling him a pathetic loser. He showed minimal emotion and waived appellate rights to get the deal. A judge by the name of Megan Marshall issued a restraining order on unredacted images from Mogen's bedroom following a lawsuit by her mother, with a hearing scheduled now for August 28th of 2025. Now, Kohberger, he remains incarcerated at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution in Kuna under inmate number 163214. Prison records indicate complaints about harassment, including verbal threats via vents, flooding in cells, and sexual threats, prompting transfer requests by the quadruple killer, which have been denied, with advice to give it some time. They'll grow on you. Now, while in the Latah County Jail pre-trial, inmates reported Kohberger watching news of his arrests obsessively, boasting about coverage, but changing channels at mentions of his family. He favored films like American Psycho, followed court TV cases such as Alec Murdaugh's trial, and maintained frequent contacts with Mother. Digital analysis showed he called her multiple times daily, including after the murders. Kohberger's academic career ended with his firing as a teaching assistant at Washington State University Pullman due to poor performance and complaints. Now, his fascination with offender psychology combined with these behaviors has fueled discussion on studying his case for insights into criminal motivations. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Only motivation you need is this guy had serious issues with women, not wired right. He's a little mama's boy. And, let's face it, he probably will lose his virginity while in prison.